Hello everybody, I hope you guys are doing well. So a little bit less than a month ago, I made a video called Affinity on Linux is Incredible, where I basically tried out Affinity on Linux through Wine. In the intro to that video, I went through a bunch of reasons why GIMP isn't actually usable for most people, especially professional graphic designers. That said, a couple weeks ago, GIMP did have a brand new release with GIMP 3.2, so I did want to just check out the release. But ultimately, this is also just a reason for me to make a video on why GIMP doesn't quite work out for me, because saying I'm not actually a real graphic designer and that my YouTube thumbnails isn't real graphic design, and I'm not gonna lie, they are not wrong, but they were basically using that to dismiss my issues with GIMP, saying I could do everything I need to do in GIMP. But that is where they are wrong, because while I can do everything I need to do in GIMP, most of the time there's just quite a bit of extra steps involved in order to even do that, even compared to what I prefer to use, which is Photopea. And keep in mind, Photopea is a web application. Yeah, it looks native, but that's because the OS I'm building, StillOS, has web app integration where you can run web apps and they sort of functionally act as if they're desktop apps. Even if I change the theme, the title bar will change with it. And this is how I use Photopea. Even then, Photopea right now through a web app is a better experience for me and for my work than GIMP is, and I use it to make all my thumbnails and just any graphics I need for YouTube videos. That said, GIMP is still a very useful program, especially if you're doing just really basic things like if I need to do a quick image conversion, instead of using a file converter, I just open it up in GIMP and export it as whatever I need my new image to be. Or just like quick resizing resolutions, cropping something, just really quick operations, I still use GIMP. But even for making a thumbnail, it's just a lot faster for me to do it with something with Photopea. And in a little bit, I'm going to show off a little comparison on how I have to do something in GIMP versus how I'm able to do something in Photopea. And keep in mind, again, Photopea is a web app. It's not even as advanced as something like Affinity or Photoshop, but still for me, Photopea is just miles ahead of GIMP right now. Now, first off, let's cover what GIMP 3.2 actually adds. So first off, there's now non-destructive link layers. Now, the way this works is if I just open up a random image right here, and let's paste this into this right here, there's a couple problems. One, if I want to modify this image, it's not going to actually update inside of our workspace right here for the other image we're working on, the other project. And then another thing is if I were to do something like scale this with the scale tool in GIMP, if I make it super small right here and then scale it back up, because I made it small, it ended up manipulating everything in the layer and it lost all of the extra detail it had from being a higher resolution. So then when you resize it back to how it was, it's like super blurry and low res. Now, if I were to instead open this as a link layer right here, now if I were to edit this image, let's just like invert the colors right here so looks completely different, go back over here and it's converted inside my new project using this image too. Now let's change it back to how it was before. And then another thing is if I go back to the scaling and I make it really small again, because it is not actually editing this layer, we get to keep all the extra pixels and data it has, and when we resize it back to how it was, no quality loss right here, other than if I just make it like huge, because now it's bigger than its original resolution. Now the next thing that they added here is vector layers. So if we go back to GIMP right here, if we go to the path tool, we can actually make our own shapes right now that have custom fill and stroke settings. And so if we click right here to create a vector layer, oh my god, the GIMP UX is horrible. This is literally cut off. But anyways, now we can actually have a fill in for our vector layer. We can make a stroke on the outside and give this a giant width. And we sort of have our own shape here, and we can do this and modify the shape. That said, Photopea has a shape tool. So yes, Photopea does have a path tool, but GIMP, if you want to make a shape, you're still limited to a rectangle or an ellipse, and you have to make a selection, paint it, and then if you want to resize the shape, good luck. I guess now you can just try to create a perfect rectangle with the path tool, but still not just as convenient as using a shape tool. There's also some new My Paint brushes. I'm never using the brush tools in GIMP in my work, so I don't care that much about that. But what I do care about is the improved text editing. So text editing, I've been playing around with it. It's just a lot less finicky and has a lot less like weird stuff going on in it. And we even got real keyboard shortcuts now, like Command B to make it bold, which by the way, Photopea doesn't actually have. So good job, GIMP. But what I still don't like about the text editing in GIMP is if I do a really basic edit, such as just like rotating the text right here, and then I want to edit the text after, because this rotate tool actually rasters rasterized text, if I want to edit the text again, it completely resets any of the edits I made to the text. Now, this isn't a problem with the text itself, but some of these tools just need to be a bit more non-destructive. Like maybe add a rotation property to the layer or something instead of actually rasterizing it and actually rotating the pixels. And if I go back to Photopea right here, we have our text. I can rotate it, and then I can go back to the text tool and still continue to edit the text right afterwards, and even change the color, do whatever I need to the text after rotating it. Now, there's also some new file format support, some extra UI and UX improvements, total ink coverage for the CMYK color selector, and a new GEGL filter browser right here. That said, now I just want to show off a bunch of things that Photopea does better that makes it so I can just get my work done a lot faster, because when I'm making a YouTube video, I'm not trying to spend an hour trying to make a thumbnail. I'm trying to spend 15 minutes and then I can go and work on my schoolwork, go hang out with some friends, do whatever. And that is why I continue to use Photopea. First off, let's talk about just transforming a layer. So if I open a random layer, let's say I got this thumbnail right here. One of the things I was just complaining about when I was talking about the link layer is how if I resize something to be smaller and then try and size it back, you end up losing your quality. Photopea does layer transformations just far better because it does it in a non-destructive way where I can resize a layer back to how it was before. And that is thanks to smart objects here. And additionally, I don't need an extra tool to actually transform this object right here. I just go to the move tool and then I can just resize it easily. I can rotate it. Just no extra work involved just to resize an image. And then as soon as I've resized it to how I want and I want to edit it, then when I don't want the smart object anymore, I just rasterize it. And now I can actually edit this layer. But for the most part, when I'm making like a YouTube thumbnail, I'm not actually editing a lot of the objects I import, and so a lot of the time I don't even have to rasterize it. It kind of just makes it so I can just drag stuff into the thumbnail and use it. Whereas with GIMP, I drag something in and then I have to go to an actual transform tool to do anything, and there's a unified transform, but I don't really like this. It's just confusing. So instead, I would usually go to like scale right here, and I have to use this scale tool. And then if I want to rotate it, I go to this rotate tool, and by the way, this right here sets the center point for the rotation. You can't actually move the image while you're rotating it. For that, you have to go back to the move tool. Now, another feature I love in Photopea is layer styles. So if I open up a random image, like let's just do the Photopea logo here. Let's say I want to add a black outline to this Photopea logo. All I have to do, right click on the layer, blending options, and we're going to go to stroke right here. And then I just set the size, set whatever color I want. I'm going to keep it at black and hit OK. And this is still a smart object, so I can continue to resize it, rotate it, and I don't have to worry at all about this outline now. And even if I rasterize it and like erase something right here, it's still going to outline it for me and keep the outline up to date. Now, let's say I want to change the color all of a sudden after making changes, just go back to blending options and I can just change it. And they don't even have this just for outlines. They have things like a bevel tool, an inner shadow, inner glow, Satan. Yeah, I'm editing this right now. It's pronounced satin, I think. Color overlay and gradient overlay, pattern overlay, outer glow, a drop shadow, and 3D. Now, for comparison's sake, we'll do a drop shadow and another outline in GIMP with the same object. Now, for a shadow, we will just go to filters and then light and shadow and drop shadow. And then this is actually a non-destructive layer effect. So just like Photopea, for this effect specifically, I actually can edit it after the fact. However, if I want to actually outline this is like the most annoying thing to do in GIMP, I'm not gonna lie. I have to go to layer, transparency, alpha to selection to actually select what's inside the layer. And then I have to make a new layer. Let's put it under the layer we're trying to add an outline to. And then I have to go to select and I have to grow the selection and choose how many pixels I want this outline. And then I have to go to the paint bucket tool and then set what color I want. I'm just gonna do black. And then I can finally paint it in. And let's merge it down so it's one layer. And now I can do Control-Shift-A to deselect, and I now have a black outline on the GIMP logo. Now let's say I want to make this outline 5 pixels bigger. I could do this whole process again and basically add an outline on top of this outline, but I want it to be more precise. But oh no, I already merged the layer down to combine it back into one layer. I guess I should have used a group. That's chill, we'll just undo everything. Okay, this wasn't planned. I actually somehow did something I can't undo, so I'm just gonna re-import the layer.
A few moments later.
Anyways, back to selecting this layer, back to grow. Let's grow it another 5 pixels. Bam. Okay, that's better, but that's still so many extra steps just to change the thickness of the outline on a layer. Things like this is just why I cannot use GIMP for my real world work. It's really annoying, and it's just so many extra steps to do such a basic task. Now, another task I do a lot for my thumbnails is removing the background from a picture of me. So let's open a picture of me that I would theoretically use on a thumbnail, and then let's try and remove the background on GIMP. Now, if this was a purely white background, I could just use the fuzzy select tool and use that to remove the background. And back in the day when I was using GIMP for my work, this is how I would do it if I was trying to remove something from white background. Now, instead, there are two other ways you can do it, which is the scissor select tool. And the way this is supposed to work is you're supposed to be able to just select something, and then the scissors are supposed to intelligently snap onto your object. But in reality, it just doesn't work that well, so you're gonna find yourself having to be really precise with it anyway, which to me kind of defeats the purpose. And if you accidentally miss a spot, it's kind of annoying to fix it sometimes too. And this gets really annoying for things like hair, because it's really bad at detecting things like this. Oh my god, it's struggling to detect a black shirt against a white wall. Like, come on. Okay, now that I've selected everything, if we invert our selection and then delete the outside, this is the end result I got. Really jagged things, just do not look right. My hair is a disaster right here. There's bits of wall going in with the shirt because it can't properly detect a black shirt against a white wall. Yeah, if someone was paying me to do this for them and I turned this in, I would get fired. Now, in the real world, you would actually just instead make a layer mask and paint the outside black. And then for any fixes you would make, you would just edit the layer mask here. But still, I already spent like 3 minutes trying to select myself with the scissor select tool and got a bad result. So this adds even more time for me. Now, another tool that GIMP has for background removal is the foreground select tool. So with this, you first make just a rough selection of the object that you want to actually get from the background, and we're going to hit enter. And now we're going to refine the selection just by drawing a little bit of the foreground right here, like so. And then we hit enter, and then you have to hope GIMP doesn't crash, which, damn, that time I got lucky. And the selection we got is still like complete trash, and we're gonna have to go into a layer mask and fix it after the fact. Now let's do a background removal in Photopea. We go to select, remove background. It takes a little second and we're done. And this is a very good result. I don't have to do any editing with this. I can just use this. Now, I do want to point out, just to be fully transparent, I am paying for the premium version of Photopea. And on the free version, because they have to do some photo processing behind the scenes, which can be expensive, you do have to watch a 30-second ad to do this on the free version. But watching a 30-second ad is still going to take less time than it would to actually do this manually in GIMP. Now, that said, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I am not a professional graphic designer, but even with that, something that takes me about 15 minutes to do in Photopea can take me 45 minutes to an hour to do with GIMP, just because of all the random inefficient things you have to end up resorting to when you're using GIMP as your main photo editor. Now, in my personal life, I have been getting really into trying to just be more efficient with everything. I've been balancing this YouTube channel, school, trying to develop a Linux distro that I want to turn into a business, and editing for other YouTubers as another job. And I also still want to have a social life, so I actually have been able to pretty easily balance that work. But part of how I've been doing that is just been trying to make every single part of my life as efficient as possible. And so sometimes just using the right tool for the job is part of that. And in my instance, I don't care that Photopea is a web app. Even paying the €5 a month, which for me is about $6 a month, I'm supporting a indie developer building an actual usable alternative to Photoshop on Linux to not have ads. To me, that's worth it, because I'm saving so much time from using Photopea instead of GIMP. That said, GIMP is the desktop option. It's been an open source staple for years, and so I really do want GIMP to succeed, and I'm hoping that the developers of GIMP are taking notes in this video. Make an easy background removal tool, add smart objects, and make the resizing and rotation and transformation as seamless as Photopea does. Add a little blending options dialog like Photopea has. And most of these features I showed off in Photopea are also standard on Affinity and Photoshop too. I will say though, only GIMP has ZPepperBrush. With that, I hope this video explained why, even as someone who does basic graphic design, GIMP just isn't a very good option unless you're doing really bare basic work. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.